Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. This is the zoning administrator hearing. Just to start off the meeting quickly, just with some administrative things. So if anybody has logged into the Zoom meeting, that it is only for observing. The city council last year suspended Zoom comments via Zoom, so it is only for in-person. So if you're present in the chamber, please fill out a speaker slip to be able to speak on an item. And so with that, the meeting is called to order. I'm assuming there never has been no comments from the public on items not on the agenda. Okay. So with that, the consent calendar, which is just an administrative process, is the zoning administrator meeting minutes. Since I'm the zoning administrator and development services director, I've already reviewed the minutes. So as drafted, they are approved. And with that, we're going to get started with the public hearing, which is the first item, is item number 2 on the agenda. And that is for a design review at 627 Covington Road. And Jaw, I believe you have a staff report for this. Oh, that's not on, Jaw, so you'll just project in. Yep.
Okay. Good afternoon, zoning administrator. This is Jia Liu, associate planner. Before you, I'm presenting design.
Can't really hear you.
I'll raise my voice. Before you, I am presenting the design review application file number SC21-0044 for your consideration. The subject site is located at 627 Covington Road, on the northeast corner of Covington Road and Parma Way. The project includes the demolition of existing one-story house and replacement of a new two-story house. The design is found in compliance with the R1-10 zoning district development standards per the city's municipal code. With regard to the project architecture, the new house is designed in a transitional modern architecture and found consistent with the single-family residential design guidelines by retaining key design attributes of the existing neighborhood and minimizing the environmental mess. 2 protected trees on the subject site will be protected and maintained during future construction. A new landscaping plan, including 9 trees and evergreen screening vegetation, is also approved to complement its site landscaping. Last but not least, in addition to the required public hearing noticing, the applicant reached out to adjacent neighbors in the immediate area. No written comments or concerns have been received by staff from the adjacent neighbors after the publication of the agenda package. With all the findings and facts presented, staff now recommends the zoning administrator to approve the project subject to the listed findings and conditions approval. And my conclusions, my staff reports concluded. Thank you.
I don't have any questions right now at this time, Jaw. Thank you. So 2 members of the public that have joined the meeting since I first introduced it is if you'd like to speak on an item, can you please fill out a speaker slip? Right now we're considering the design review application at 627 Covington. So with that, I don't have any of them that are specifically written for Covington. I know that there's 2 other items on the agenda, but Terry, is yours for this one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so yeah, it says item 1, which is the meeting minutes. So I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, go ahead. You can come on up. So this is public speaker Terry Couture.
Hi, Nick.
Yeah.
I'm Terry Couture. I am on the Art Council, but I'm not speaking for the Art Council today. I'm speaking for myself and some of the neighbors. We've lived on Parma for 32 years. We really enjoy the trees. We know that 2 trees have been taken down already. We are concerned that tree 3, 4, and 6 may not be protected enough because the driveway is at the end of the drip line, and all the information that we have is you should have twice the amount of from the drip line to the trunk and then from the drip line out for the trunk area. And the driveways are gonna cover that. So we would hope that maybe you could make the driveway pervious as opposed to impervious. We would hate to leave those trees When we go from downtown Los Altos to our street in the summer, the weather goes down about 8 degrees. Thank you very much.
All right, so is there any other public comments for Covington? Okay. Just so everyone also knows for the next items that are coming up, is that if there is something that is specific, like what Ms. Couture has brought up is, we have subsequent building permits as well as the actual tree removal permits that are, specific to each design review that is, applied for. So this is just the entitlements to give the authorization for that, and it's identifying that there are protected trees that would remain. We would do the verification with the subsequent permits that are issued. So this is considered a project right now as under review. Even though we call it a design review permit, it's an entitlement for discretionary authorization. But so the tree protection component is something that we will continue to review and monitor during the building construction document phase. And actually their specific plan for tree protection. So one of the things though that I will at least mention specific to Ms. Couture's comment is that the pervious versus impervious surfaces is that they will have to, although the plans, we usually ask for pretty in detail elaboration on some of the plans that do reflect landscaping. Until we get into construction documents, those aren't 100% exactly how it will remain. So they would have to further establish that those trees are protected, and that would be verified by our staff, but it would be certified by an attestation by their landscape architect, and potentially on top of that, an arborist. So Terry, we would be able to consider that under the actual implementing permits, but it's not something that is subject to the design review authorization for discretionary approval. So with that being said is there's no more other public comments, so I'm closing the public comment component. Since this is obviously a zoning administrator and staff level recommendation, I've already kind of glanced at these plans prior to today's meeting, and it does meet the substantial conformance to the design review regulations, and with that it is approved. So whoever is present representing the project, I know I didn't ask for any comments. Obviously, there's nothing that's an objection that would hinder the project. So with that, Jaw will prepare a approval letter for you and have that to you within the next couple of weeks, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Terry. So with that, we're gonna move to item number 3, which is for the design review application that is at 741 Sunshine Court. Jaw, can you please provide the staff report?
Hey, Jia, Liu Associate Planner again. I am presenting design review application file number SC23-0012 for your consideration. The subject site is located at 741 Sunshine Court. Post-project includes the demolition of an existing one-story house and replacement of a new two-story house with a basement. The new residence will be situated similar to the existing house, but with further rear setback, including a minimum of 49 feet and 5 inches to the first floor and 52 feet and 10 inches to our balcony at the second floor. The second-story balcony was initially proposed to be in a 9-foot depth, but now reduced to a 5-foot and 6-inch depth. Overall, the proposed house is found in compliance with the R1-10 district development standards per the city's zoning code. The residence is designed in a transitional modern range architectural style and found consistent with the single-family residential design guidelines by incorporating traditional range elements such as hip roof, aligned fenestrations on the facade, and traditional exterior finish materials. And modern design aspects include flat roof entry porch and tall ceiling living room at the forefront. With regard to trees, no protected trees is located within proximity to the site. A new landscaping plan, including 12 new trees and evergreen screening vegetation along the perimeter is approved to complement to the site landscaping. Lastly, alongside the mandatory public hearing notices, the applicant has submitted a community outreach summary document outlining their efforts to engage with the neighborhood. After the public notice was sent, staff did receive feedback from neighboring residents regarding the proposed two-story house. In response to these concerns, staff proposes adding an additional condition for this project approval. This condition shall require the applicant to replace the proposed 5 multiplex hedge bamboos along the middle of the rear property line with an alternative fast-growing screening vegetation, ensure proper screening without the risk of invasiveness. With all the findings and facts presented, staff now recommends the zoning administrator approve the project subject to the listed findings and the conditions of approval, with one new added condition that the applicant shall replace that 5 bamboo along the middle of the rear property line with an alternative fast-growing screening vegetation with a minimum size of 15 gallons or 24-inch box. Staff now concludes the presentation.
I don't have any questions for you right now. Thank you, John. So with that, we are going to move to public comments for the design review application on 741 Sunshine Court. I have 3 speaker slips as of right now. With that, is there a project applicant that would like to speak would like to add anything to the project before I take public comment?
Yeah, hi, this is Leo, I'm the project.
You'll just have to speak a little bit higher. That's for when we have city council. We're just using just the screen right now for this meeting. Yep.
Sorry, got you, yeah. The beautiful, the court neighbor is gonna require a nice neighbor. It's combined, all the neighbors combined with 1-story and 2-story house around. And we propose a 2-story house, and the design is thoughtfully designed to preserve the neighbor's character and minimize the disruption to the nature terrains. There was no trees proposed to be removed. And also, the proposed building footprint pretty much light up with the existing house footprint. And
Excuse me, could you speak up? Can't hear.
yeah, okay, no problem, sorry. Yeah, the house setting is pretty close to the existing footprint, and with the very good distance from back neighbor, for back property line to the house. And the proposed house have a higher stand architecture material like a smooth stucco finish, wood siding, also the metal roof. Yeah, we try to bring a good quality product in neighbors. Yeah, to keep the neighbor value. And recently, me and Henry, the owner, owner is traveling quite a bit. He wasn't able to meet today's meeting, but we're trying to communicate with the neighbor, Dick, Low, and Sharon for the comments about replacing the planting. We kind of get agreement to we're going to replace the species, not a problem. Yeah, thank you.
So with that, I'm gonna start with public comments. So Sharon Feingold.
Fingold. Yeah. Thank you. So my name is Sharon Fingold. I'm adjacent neighbor on the east side, 751 Sunshine Court. I want to thank Ja for her responsiveness to emails, phone, and visits. So I want to make a comment on community outreach. You know, when I read section 4 of the design requirements, I don't think it was met. I'm not saying you should stop the proceedings, but the owner did a meet and greet. He shared some very preliminary plans in January of 2023. In February of 2023, we as neighbors sent him some suggestions. And specifically, we asked him to send us the revised plans when they were ready, plus a few other things. And that never happened. So we recommended a meeting too with us, but we would have at least liked to have gotten the final design documents when they're here. Having said that, since March 10th, he has been very responsive. And we've gone we've had some email discussions, because I believe he's in China right now. Talking about landscaping, so we're really happy that the bamboo's gone. And also for us, in particular at 751 Sunshine Court, is our sunlight or daylight plane, I don't know the technical term, to protect our solar. So of course, the house is designed to protect it, and we just want to ensure that any landscaping choices in the final result through maintenance or whatever, if that would be a condition, to preserve that, because it will kind of defeat the purpose to have really tall hedges right next to our garage. So that's our primary thing. I wasn't sure if we could talk about pre-demolition and construction, but I put some things in my public comments that I submitted to you. This property is rather unique. It was in the same family from the 60s until just recently. They were very nice people, but they weren't great at maintaining. And we had a rat infestation one time, and we really want to make sure that doesn't happen again. It's an old garage, and then there are these old storage containers, and we hear things at night, which is not pleasant on a summer evening. And then we put some things in about construction. I think as neighbors, we're just concerned about sound because a lot of us work from home. We're worried about rainwater because we know right now it's not a problem, but when things get moved around. And also just dirt and dust. Another odd thing about the previous owners, they had some old-fashioned practices, which was dumping oil in their backyard. So it's not a super fun site or anything, but we don't know what's in there, and we don't know what would blow around and get around the neighbors. So that's why I put that in also. Let's see, I have a few questions just about when construction will start, but I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask those.
So construction related and construction drawing related comments, similar to Ms. Couture's comment with the previous item, is stuff that would be handled during what we like to say is CDs, so construction drawing phases. So the entitlements, no, we wouldn't address that right now. So everyone knows is that everything that does require a building permit does have to conform to our very exhaustive regulations for construction site maintenance and operations. That's just a part of our municipal code, regardless. So when you really make a condition of approval for specific construction, that's usually for like bigger projects like multifamily, or when there's like street closures. Single family residences that are in an existing tract of homes do not require and necessitate that type of a condition of approval. So it's something that would be handled under our municipal code. I'm gonna somewhat do a little bit so that I don't forget certain public comments. Your public comment about the height of the potential landscaping and everything. Hopefully the project architects can kind of reflect that to kind of pick a varietal that would kind of adhere to best neighbor practices. So people will probably hear me say that, and potential other public comments is that you guys are going to be living next to each other. I would really hope that you guys realize that, because you want to get along, obviously, but there are certain protections that are in our municipal code when things are impacting solar. So people would have to be able to not cut down, but trim back in order to make sure that it's not an impediment to the solar protections that are under the federal law. So there's that component. So with that, that's kind of where I would have just to be able to answer it. And I think some of your questions are more so things that you'll have to continue to stay in contact with JAW when they go into construction document phases.
Okay, so I guess I'll meet with JAW later to understand the process and what to be on the lookout for. Okay, well, we do hope to have a really great relationship with the neighbor. Like I said, he has been responsive in the last week, and we hope that continues and he's more proactive about communicating. Thank you very much.
All right, so the next comment card that I have is from Richard.
I'm Richard Silverman. I reside at 740 Sunshine Drive, which is the neighbor directly behind the proposed new residence. Let's see, it's been kind of a tumultuous 2 weeks because as Sharon pointed out, we were expecting to hear things from the owner, Henry, and only thing we got was a yellow card saying, hey, there's going to be a meeting next week. So we've been kind of trying to communicate about the plan, which was released. I met with Josh twice, I think, so far, and learned a lot more about the plan. Definitely settling into a more of a comfort zone about this new project, which Leo and team have done a really nice job. I will say that at the outset. The three things that I put in my emails, you guys, I'm not sure what the order is, but first, regarding the bamboo plants, that's been abated or managed. I think it's actually already been created as a condition. So that is great. And a surprise today was, as I found the contact information for the landscape architect, we actually had a chat just about 3 hours ago, and it was very productive. She explained that's a different kind of bamboo, but either way, we are happy to see that one gone, and we were discussing some of the alternatives. My impression, having done a project like this 20 years ago, is some of this stuff doesn't really get worked out at this stage. I think you can alluding to that, Nick. So if these comments are premature, we'll just take it up again. I think the most important thing, as Sharon talked about being proactive, we only got a notice maybe a week ago, since Postal Service is kind of slow. You may have sent it much earlier, I don't know. So in a similar way, as it comes up for CDs or other things along the progress, how we will find that out is an open question. I guess we'll sort of discover when will it be time to look at things like the latest in the thinking about plants and what have you. Had an issue definitely about privacy, because actually when I did my project back in 2001, we had something called the Architectural Site and Control Committee. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I had to have meetings with all of my adjacent neighbors as well as any resident within 200 feet of my property. I had to bring them into the fold, show them my drawings, take a lot of feedback. Certain things were definitely not liked, and I was sort of stipulated that I had to modify my design to satisfy all these neighbors. So things have changed a lot since those days, and helped me understand that. But among those, the city stipulated the planting of 3 redwood trees to create a screen, funnily enough, between my property at 740 Sunshine and this very property at 741 Sunshine Court. So those redwoods have done really well. I've invested in maintaining them every 3 years so that they're quite beautiful, and they do a pretty good job of a screen, but it's only part of the land that's at 741. The remaining opening has been wide open. So my view from my kitchen or my dining area is all blue sky and beautiful trees and things. And now it will have a big house in that picture. So I was talking about having planting that would help continue the screen that the redwood started and just continue it the rest of the way across. So the landscape architect, someone named Yu Wen, and I had a good discussion about that. She seemed open to my proposal about Italian cypress or Mediterranean cypress, as it's called. These trees go very tall, and they're kind of like these green pencil things when they're maintained properly. She liked that idea. Haven't broached it other than email to Henry, so we don't know how the owner feels. But as I said before, some of these final plant choices, I'll just say it's clear that UN will probably visit our property so she can see from our side. Actually, she pointed out shading our garden, and maybe we wouldn't be that happy if the sun stopped altogether in the afternoon. So there's definitely some joint work to do, and I look forward to doing that. But once again, not knowing, we're all very busy in our jobs, like, is something coming up for approval? Is there a permit? Is this construction happening? I'd be interested in hearing how we can get enough notice that we can participate and come in and work together to make everything smooth without interrupts or delays.
So, okay, thank you. So I will respond to a couple of your things. So in regards to landscaping, and I'm very well aware of the ARB component that used to be a combination in tandem with the planning commission and then was subsequently subdivided into 2 different standalone commissions, one being planning commission, which still remains, as it's a legal land use requirement of any jurisdiction in the state of California. And then an optional one, which was the Design Review Commission. The Design Review Commission has since been dismissed as of last year, as that was a requirement in our housing element. I am the successor essentially to be able to allow for there to be a public hearing for single family. Otherwise, it would just be a staff level approval and you wouldn't have the opportunity. So that's what this still is. In regards to though, things such as landscaping, the city has never and does not have specific landscape design requirements. There has been a facilitation with the ARB and with the DRC, those two standing bodies that previously used to essentially negotiate from the dais with arbitrary and capricious decision-making authority, which was not in line with today's new planning and zoning and housing laws. We are bound to, as all jurisdictions in California, whether or not they're doing it or not, we are bound by those laws now to only apply objective design review or standards. And so with that, we don't have anything specific. What I will say, in my year now, since we've created the zoning administrator authority and approval process, is neighbors that get more honey with vinegar method in regards to collaboratively working with their new neighbors. We've seen quite a bit of productive discussions and conversations that have resulted in a little bit of a give and a take. So I would say, I think the landscaping stuff can go a long way if that's something that again is mutually exclusive for both of you, that you would benefit. Obviously, there's trade-offs though, is what's gonna cast shade over your back lawn, similar to their side neighbor. She won't want Italian cypress next to hers for that very reason. And so we do, obviously try to help steer you guys in the right direction, but there's nothing for an objective design review process, which is one of the reasons why I will at least share, and so that everybody does it in the room. It does feel like, okay, wait, is there a step being missed because of what the ARB and the DRC used to do? But they were applying subjective standards that we're not allowed to do anymore. So everyone is aware is that this project is protected under the HAA, or the Housing Accountability Act of 2017. This was reestablished in 2019. The HAA protects any housing development which is 2 or more housing units. Because this house is proposing an ADU is protected under the HAA, I do not have legal authority to deny the application. There are other components of the project that we are allowed to provide objective review and direction on modifications, but the city of Los Altos does not have legal authority to deny this application. So with that, I would say, again, you're going to be living next to each other as neighbors, more bees with honey than vinegar. And I think that's kind of what it already sounds like the recipe is happening. And so I hope that that can kind of continue. If you do have additional future questions about the project, John is the assigned project planner that will be reviewing this under the construction documents or CDs. And you can definitely reach out to her and she can definitely talk about that further with you.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you for sharing that background, because it's a little bit, my mind is blown. All you have to do is add an ADU and now you're actually contributing to the housing crisis, or trying to help with the housing crisis.
Yes.
That's fascinating, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have one more issue about the fence and just wanting my property to stay secure, because I know when we did our project, the fence was down for a while, but I don't really have any idea how to stay in sync, I guess, because at some point we agreed over emails, Leo and I, that, yeah, of course, fence will be replaced. It's going to be the standard height, 6+2 and redwood and all that. But how to minimize the downtime so that because there's a lot of dogs and other things that go on that I really prefer not to be encroaching on my property during the construction.
So anything that is what's considered a shared property fence or wall is a mutually agreed upon decision of both property owners. So unless the property at 741 Sunshine were to want to put it in on the inside of their property line, So here's the property line and they want to put it right next to it, abutting, not adjoining, abutting, and on their own standalone land. One, they would lose, a few inches worth of land area, which is not necessarily advantageous for anybody. So it behooves property owners to share the mutual responsibility of, coordinating what you're discussing right now. Obviously, I have my own animals and things of that nature, so I would obviously want, things to not be, scurrying out of my yard as well. So I understand that, but I think the project applicant's designer will be able to work with you as you're nodding your head, yes. And so that is not necessarily something the city opines on in regards to, it's not a construction document kind of component, and it's not a construction phasing requirement for the city's purview because fences do not require permits in the city of Los Altos. So fences have never been regulated under the building code, so they've always been silent. So we always look for it and we obviously limit it in height. So if it goes above height, then it requires a specific project permit, not a building permit. So if it's under the 6+2, you're allowed to do that by right. And there's no permit from the city that's required. Permits are only required for fences, walls, and hedges essentially that end up having a footing. So that's then when you actually end up triggering that you would need to come in for an actual permit from the city.
So concrete footings for posts.
No, that doesn't count. It's actually a footing that creates a structure.
So,
So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you very much.
and then sorry, the handwriting, is it Lou for
Yes.
this one? Okay, sorry. And then I know there's other folks in the audience. Everyone else is here to talk about the other project, correct? Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Just have two things that I realized carried some weight 20 years ago, but they don't anymore. So hopefully we can work them out with the owner. One is my property's on the other side of his back fence. And for the sake of some privacy and screening, there are now bushes, Texas privets that are about 15 feet tall. And they'll give us a pretty good screen for most of the property, but they are 45 years old. So I'm requesting the owner, and I copied your office on it, that during the construction and demolition process to please give them a wide berth so that while the owner's new landscaping grows and takes root, these bushes will give us some sense of screening in the meantime. The other item is the balcony. I can understand having a balcony so that you can open your doors and take in the air and take a deep breath, but when a balcony is 5.5 feet deep, large enough for tables and for a congregation and to sit and have cell phone calls, it's unpleasant to think about. So I hope that's another thing we can work out with the owner. That's all. Thank you.
So with that, I'm gonna close public comment. As I've kind of already articulated, is that the design review application at 741 Sunshine Court is protected under the Housing Accountability Act. Again, it's not to pass the buck, it's just to know where my authority starts and where it ends. With that being said, is this design review application is approved as presented. With that being said, I will continue to emphasize the project owner is not here, but his applicant is. I think you've heard some good public testimony that is something that I hope that you can relay to your property owner about just being able to collaboratively work in the new environment in which they're going to be living. Obviously, I will say is that the municipal code does enforce construction management. So if things are above the noise threshold for construction, is that it doesn't go to code enforcement, it goes directly to the building inspector that's assigned to that project and the chief building official for the city. So that is actually how those particular complaints do have to get addressed moving forward, and they are addressed. So that is something that does, so you're aware when you go into construction phases, is that the building division would issue fines that are above the allowed thresholds for noise and construction management for the best practices of BMPs, as you're aware, in other jurisdictions as well. So with that, this item has concluded. Thank you for everyone that came. So with that, we do have item number 4. Now I will at least acknowledge is that we're not going to have a staff presentation. This item has been continued to a date certain for the April 3rd zoning administrator hearing. However, because there are people that are in the chambers and did come to speak on the item, I will provide the 2 public speaker cards the opportunity to be able to provide me their public testimony today. And then you don't have to come back if you don't want to, if you can't come back for the April 3rd meeting. But so with that, I will have Jamie come to provide their comments.
My name is Jamie, and this is regarding 284 Alvarado. I live across the street and at 559 Los Pinos. The owner never contacted us and just sent adjacent and immediate neighbors and asked us to sign and agree with all designs. So on the second floor, there's 6 windows look directly into my living room and 2 of my bedrooms and all of my backyard. I believe there's like a line of sight when applying for permits, and the rendering of the landscape is obscured. The reason being is there is a errant shrub oak that grew wild on the Los Niños side, right next to about 1.5 feet away from the electrical pole, and actually grew into the electrical pole and lifted the ground. Years ago, this particular address had been a rental for over 20 years. The original owner had dementia and moved closer to one of their children. And therefore, the tenants couldn't remove the trees. In fact, for the past 2 years, the trees in front on the Alvarado side actually fell down. Consecutively 2 winters fell down. And there's 1 more tree that's also dead and not being taken care of. So with that, the oak tree in questions is one of the landscape they stated that could be act as a screen, but it doesn't because it's obstructing my phone line and possibly my electrical line, because that's that tall. Okay, that's 1. 2, 6 windows looked directly into my living room, my bedrooms. That's a bit much. And we were never consulted, and we would just set the rendering of the plan. And I just find that owners should have at least talked to us and at least let us have some input with the design. I don't mind you having the 2nd story. I mind that you didn't mind neighbors' inputs. And look right into their plans. I think that they clearly care more about the existing swimming pool than all of the other design, because the swimming pool they're keeping. Okay. So
one of the questions that I'm gonna ask you specifically about, so I have been looking while you've been
Go
talking.
ahead.
So you live directly behind the property, which is the 564?
559.
559. So you're across the street?
I'm across the street with 6 windows, look into my living room and my bedrooms.
So, but one of your questions, so in regards to the windows, we do not have objective design criteria, for window placement. That is something, as I previously discussed with the last project, that we, that was previously addressed with the subjective design criteria. So that is something that I cannot opine on. Now, in regards to the tree that you're specifically talking about at this subject site, which is essentially growing right around the power pole, correct? And it's still there, yes?
Oh, yes.
I'm just looking at it from Google Street View. So one of the things that I will say, and the deputy director can make note of this and before it comes back, is I am willing to grant a condition of approval to remove that tree in its entirety. The city council did just authorize, under the new tree protection ordinance that became operative last week, the authority for me to require trees to be removed when they are potentially an impediment for the power and utility lines in the city, because we do have so many overhead lines. This would be a specific example of when we do require planting plans for new trees that are planted in order to be able to observe and show us how they will not impact power lines, meaning a certain varietal that will not grow a certain height or a certain width. This one is clearly not going to be able to be trimmed back. From what I can see is that the pole and then the actual trunk of the tree is too close to be able to preserve it. So with that, we can make that a condition of approval to have that removed, because I do think that that's a future issue to be had for this particular property as well as the neighborhood, and we don't want to have it lose any of people's overhead lines. But again, as I said, with the window situation, we do not have objective design criteria that we can apply for that. Obviously, I would hope that the design that they, obviously most houses have window coverings and don't have their windows open all the time. And it is across the street. So hopefully they don't have as much of a view as you're concerned with. But they can address some of those concerns potentially with their own planting plan of new plant materials on the site. So we can look.
They can't because the power line wrap around their property.
Correct, but there's still things that they can do on inside their property line, so it's not what's traditionally been seen now, which is actually in the public right of way. So there's public right of way that is what most people think is a part of their parcel. The public right of way is actually 10 feet from the back of the asphalt into almost every property in Los Altos. So that's actually public street area. So
you have sort of an easement of that.
well, it's the ultimate public right of way, so it's unimproved land that the city has not taken to make improvements
Okay,
at this time.
okay.
Obviously, I don't think there's any plan in the near term future, because that would be very costly for the city, since we don't have any really throughout most of the city, other than in our commercial and mixed use areas. But like I said previously, with the first comment for the first project is planting plans. These are not 100%, and that they will be reviewed in the subsequent permit applications, okay?
Okay, so if so there's nothing I can do with the 6 windows looking straight at my bedrooms.
No, there is nothing that we can apply objective design criteria for that, no.
All right.
Thank you. And then I think it's Bina.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my name is Bina and I live right behind the 284 Alvarado at 564 Los Pinos. And like Jamie said, you know, our concern is also privacy, sunlight and the views. And, you know, we have not got any communication from the neighbor at all. The only thing we got was, you know, the rendering, which are really hard to read. and then this photo, that's it. You know, besides that, we have not got any communication, no, it was a surprise to us that they are doing a development. You know, our privacy, we have a bathroom window that's facing them. We have the kids' study room. Our master bedroom is facing that. Kitchen is facing that area. It's gonna block all of our views. It's gonna look into us. So that is a big concern for us. And then in addition, we have solar panels, which is, you know, we are definitely concerned about that, how it's gonna block the sunlight. And we enjoy sunlight in all of our house. And it's gonna really affect the sunlight coming into our house. You know, and we, you know, like I said in my email, we bought the house with the, you know, just the views that the city offers. And we have these, you know, two beautiful redwood trees, and the neighbor behind us has another redwood tree as well, you know. We enjoy the walk in our streets, looking at the landscape. You know, I'm sure a lot of our neighbors do as well. And from our backyard, from our front yard, we get a lot of views. And the second story is just gonna obstruct a lot of our views too. You know, and then, you know, sunlight is a major concern for us.
So one of the things that the city does have in regards to an objective design requirement is the observation of the daylight plane for single family residences. It's not something that is enforceable for ADUs, but it is still enforceable for single family residences. This project, I'm looking at the elevations currently, which we would be considering when the item does come for the full hearing in 2 more weeks from now, is that it would be able to be reflected is that the daylight plane is being observed, which does facilitate the at least architectural demonstration that daylight would not be obstructed to the adjacent property. The fact that what kind of serves as their back and side yard essentially, which is immediately adjoining your side yard, is 17 feet and 8 inches away from the property line. So that is actually quite a bit of space in between the two properties with respects to what is required for the setback, which is only 10 feet. So they've almost doubled the required setback. They could actually go 7 feet closer to your property, as was allowed under the code. But the daylight plane actually requires them to essentially either reduce down the footprint and projection of height of that portion of the structure, or to push their structure further towards the Alvarado side, which is essentially what they've done. So likewise, it is actually objectively being applied, and we're allowed to facilitate that. So there would be no other way that we would be able to do that. Now, when I talked about specifically the windows and in regards to the privacy that I know most neighbors are concerned with, is the second story is of their floor plan is the predominant of it is there's one bedroom that really is gonna have a window that would face a portion of your side yard area. And then the other one second story window that faces the property is a water closet for the master suite. I
And
don't.
that is, you know, we have a master bedroom right on that side
Right.
and, you know, several other rooms.
But so the window is just for emergency egress, which is required under the building code. So there's not gonna be an issue with that. I don't also believe that most people don't put some type of window treatment in a water closet. So we, again, objective design requirements do not they're being facilitated in what has been proposed. But the windows would not be a requirement to be modified under the standards that are here. One thing that I will at least say to you folks is, so our design review handout does say subsection F, which is to do community outreach. Technically, our code does not require that. So if someone didn't want to do it, they don't have to. The design review section, which is 14.76, does not require community outreach to be specific where they actually go and talk to each individual neighbor. That's still somewhat of a little bit of a carryover that if people are willing to do it, we will, kind of, say, yep, that's a best practice, so that you don't end up with a bunch of people at every public hearing objecting to it, so that they at least have a little bit of familiarity with the project. In regarding to the noticing requirements, they did adhere to that by actually the notification of the yellow card that you guys got. And so there's that component. So this is also sometimes the double-edged sword, where it's a love-hate of, the community outreach component, where some people don't think that they were, informed early enough, and some people get the yellow card, and, then that's the first that they're hearing about it. But even just that little bit of information sharing that would have come from them is essentially a little bit even something beyond the requirements that we have. So we don't have anything that to objectively apply for the window requirement like you're talking about. But in regards to any shade potentially being casted on your property, but also specifically solar panels, that is something that is addressed by the daylight plane specifically. So that will not be an obstruction to daylight.
And what about the views? We'll be having a lot of, unobstructed views of the city landscapes now.
So the city has never and does not protect private views. That was something that was discretionarily applied by the ARB and the DRC. However, there's no standard that requires any view protection in the city. In California, the most common view protection is when you're in the coastal zone, and that's because that's something that's applied and protected under the California Coastal Act. We do not have public views that must be preserved and protected under our code or any regional requirements within in Silicon Valley. So you'd have to literally be on the bay or on the coastline in order to have something that's applied at the regional or state level. But we do not restrict or protect private views in the city.
Okay, so one of my other concerns, like the property is really poorly, managed. It's not, kept well. There's termite issue, infestation. I'm just afraid, with the bigger footprint, it's just gonna, I don't know how, the future is gonna hold.
So this commonly happens, especially when you have ground ivy, which I can see from the Google Street View of the property as well. That is where you get a lot of rats and a lot of infestation issues on any private property, as well as older homes end up becoming somewhat of a breeding ground for lack of continual maintenance. So with that being said, is that we would generally see actually a lot of that being remedied with the new construction, because you're removing or replacing in its entirety a lot of the issues that are actually directly causing kind of the infestation or the insect issues like you're mentioning. So a lot of that would actually kind of get nipped in the bud with the new construction that would actually occur. So, and there are certain things, again, in regards to just the best management practices of new construction that would actually nip in the bud a lot of the issues that you're talking about. But that's something that we also addressed during the construction document review, as well as the construction document build out. So when you actually have a building permit.
So, and then even during the construction process, like I said, we work from home. It's gonna be a lot of noise and distraction. Is the city, does anything about it, or it's just?
So if it's over a certain decibel level during construction, obviously construction to some degree is always going to be somewhat loud. There's going to be some form or time of the project that's going to be louder than others. With that being said, is that there are limited construction hours. It's not just all day, every day. And then there is a decibel level for certain types of the construction phases that are allowed to actually essentially have the amplified kind of noise from the actual construction process itself. So that's what I was saying with the project that was last reviewed, is that the construction building inspectors do have to enforce that when they actually receive a complaint specifically to construction noise, and those are associated with municipal fines.
Okay. And then, one of the other concerns that I did mention, I mean, a lot of kids do walk to school, bike, walk, and it's at a corner. A lot of people have been speeding there and they're taking the sharp turns. I'm just concerned, even us pulling out of the driveway, we're blocked with construction equipment on both sides. It just hinders, our safety. So just wanted to see what the city,
So
can
that
do.
is something that, so if it ends up becoming like construction trailers, construction equipment, things of that nature, then there would be potentially the requirement, but it also depends on exactly what they have to have for the site to get developed. So it might end up requiring and triggering an encroachment permit, and that's an encroachment into the public right of way. So in regards to it being on a corner, we wouldn't allow fencing to be all the way to what is the perceived property line or the back of the curb. We would require it to be pulled in to be able to create what's called the site visibility triangle, which is 15 from any point of intersection of the actual corner to be able to facilitate what is considered an engineering best practice for site visibility. So a lot of those kind of specific concerns are things that are addressed during the actual construction document phases. And inevitably, then we actually enforce it during the actual permit time.
And another question, I know you were mentioning to Jamie that there's the easement on Los Niños where the tree is. So their plan is to build a garage and a driveway there. So if there's an easement, how are they going to build the driveway? Would they be taking over the little part of the city land?
No, so similarly to your property, you have your a big chunk of your driveway is in the city property.
Mhm.
So the city property, for all extents and purposes, is essentially like where that fence is that's existing of the neighbor. That's actually where your property line is.
Okay.
Everyone's property line in Los Altos, most people, it's also partly, I'm assuming you can imagine, is if the city said, oh, we're gonna go through the entire city and we're gonna essentially take back 8 to 10 feet in certain areas of the city and put in sidewalks, people would love the sidewalks, but they would hate the fact that we're taking back that much area of everyone's front yards essentially. So that's why the city is now probably at the point that we would never do that as a mass project. But so it would be the same operative function like what you have right
I
now.
just wanted to
It's your
understand.
driveway approach that's allowed
Okay,
to
'cause
be
they
in
have
there.
a fence right here, so I
We-
just wasn't sure
Yeah,
if that. meant-
we measure though everyone's setbacks from the actual property line, not from the perceived property line, which is the back of the curb.
Mhm.
See, and you're actually in an area that actually has improved curb area. There's a lot of parts of the city that don't even have driveway approaches with full-on rolled curbs. So that's actually different for your kind of area of the city. So yeah, so they would have to make their improvement for their driveway approach. And then they would only be allowed a mailbox and also then like flat work or like sidewalk or path area and landscaping in the public right of way, which is what most people, like what you're saying, an easement. It's not an easement, it's just the right of way that we haven't improved.
Since they have the driveway, would they still be able to put the private screenings there, or how would?
So they can put the private screenings within a certain distance, but it's gonna have to be pulled back to a certain degree to be able to ensure that there is the site visibility triangle, like I was mentioning to you. Yeah, so that they would be able to, so that they, as well as yourself, would be able to safely ingress and egress out of the property.
No, in terms of the aesthetics appeal of that corner, I'm just wondering if there's any other houses in the neighborhood that has just a garage facing, just in the corner.
So the city doesn't have a specific design requirement where the garage approach has to be taken off of one specific side. There are some jurisdictions that do specifically say that it has to be taken off of a specific street essentially. We do not really have that specific hard design requirement. However, the way that they have designed it would actually be the best practice to be able to have a garage off of Los Niños because of the way that the street is designed in regards to it would be considered a lower classification of street to be able to provide safe ingress and egress.
Yeah, I'm just wondering from like aesthetics appeal, like how that's gonna look for the street, just having just a garage and a driveway, without the house facing the other way. But I'm just wondering, I'm not seeing that anywhere in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and so I mean, that's the way that they've configured it is that it's very staggered kind of architecture on that side of Los Niños, which has the garage as well as then, some windows that are all recessed and everything. For all extensive purposes, it looks like it very well could be the front of a house. So it's just, that's a design requirement that's that they've objectively met the criteria of the city.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. And as previously discussed, that item is continued to a date certain, which is for the April 3rd, 2024 zoning administrator hearing. With that, that is our last item. So I call this meeting adjourned at 5:01. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, thank you.